In this video I'm going to talk about brain-computer interfaces, and I'm going to do that with the help of this device, which is called the NextMind. So you will also see a review of the NextMind BCI. My name is Joosten, I'm a biohacker and cyborg futurist. I write articles on the topic of human enhancement, human augmentation. So if you want to know more, there's a link to my blog down below in the description. And also, of course, I make videos about these kind of topics. So if you like this video, take a moment and subscribe to my channel down below. As a profession, I do virtual keynotes and webinars on these topics. So if you're interested in that, for your conference or symposium or for your company, you can find the links also down below under the section Hire Me. There are timestamps also down below in the description. So if you click on the timestamp, which is like minutes and seconds, you can go directly to that part of the video. But for an optimal experience, I would advise you to watch the video from the beginning till the end. So let me start with a story. I'm 7 years old, maybe 8, and I'm sitting at the couch with my parents, and we just had fries, and afterwards I went to have a shower. So I'm sitting there in my pajamas and my hair is still wet, but I'm really excited. I do not want to go to bed because my parents are watching a television show, and in the television show there's Uri Geller, and maybe you know Uri Geller. He's an Israeli magician, illusionist, and he does performances where he uses the power of his mind. And one of the tricks he does is where he can show you that he can bend a spoon. So when I saw that on television, I hurried to the kitchen and I got a spoon myself. And I was sitting there using all my mind power to bend the spoon. But it did not work out. So I was frustrated, but that was my first encounter with the use of the mind. What is the power of the mind? Another tip, if you want to watch a movie on this topic, is The Man Who Stared at Goats. It's a movie from 2009 with George Clooney, Kevin Spacey, Jeff Bridges, Ewan McGregor. So there's the link, of course, again with Star Wars. And it's really funny. It's also based on a true story where the US military around the 60s and 70s was working on the idea of developing their psychic powers, and they did certain experiments with that, and that's also where the goats were involved, where you have to stare at them. Well, you watch the series, and one of my favorite scenes, unfortunately I cannot show it due to property rights, is that there's also a scene where a soldier in this program wants to use the power of his mind to run through a wall. Well, you can imagine how that works out. So if you're into that, watch this movie, The Man Who Stared at Goats. So that was my story about the power of the mind with Uri Geller, a movie of the US Army. So let's talk about an overview of this video. I'm going to talk about why is brain-computer interfacing the future of human and computer interaction. Then we're going to talk about the company and the device. How does it work? What are current applications and future applications? And what is my opinion and my conclusion? I think that brain-computer interfacing or brain-machine interfacing is a future of the interaction we have with computers, with smartphones, with software, with robots. Currently, if we want to give information or interact with machines or computers, we use our type board, maybe we swipe, maybe you use your voice to activate certain things at your devices. But I think a future application where we also be using the power of the brain. So certain brain waves, which are these signals are decoded and then are being analyzed and put into action. And it's already being used a lot currently in healthcare applications. For example, with patients who suffer from the locked-in syndrome. And these patients, they are fully conscious, fully aware, but they cannot move their muscles. Some of the patients can move their eyelids, as a means to communicate with their caregivers or with their family, but there are also patients locked in who are not able to move a muscle. In these kinds of situations, brain-computer interfacing can really be enormously helpful. And I also was a moderator at an event for the Royal Dutch Academy of Sciences, and one of the speakers at that event was Nick Ramsey, and Nick Ramsey is like a worldwide pioneer on this domain. And compared to the NextMind device, where I am going to talk about, is in their research they work with implants, so implantable technology to pick up the brain waves, and that way these patients can communicate with, like I mentioned, their family, their caregivers, or other people. And as a recurring theme on my website and in my videos, you can see that when first the technology is being used in a healthcare setting to help patients, then afterwards you can also see the use of this technology with healthy individuals. And there's a main difference between using implants, like I mentioned with the research of Nick Ramsey and his colleagues, and using devices that are on the outside of the skull. And an example of that is the NextMind device, which I will talk about later. But going inside the skull, maybe you are familiar also with the ideas of the Neuralink company. And if you're interested in that, I made a video about what is Neuralink, how does the technology work, and what's their vision for the future. And I share a link to that video in the description down below. So let's talk about the company. The company is a spin-off from research in French, and the company also sent me a device for this review. So thank you for that. The founder and CEO of the company is Professor Sid Couillet. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. And he also used to work at the Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique. So that's the French National Center for Scientific Research. Je ne parle français très bien. I just said I'm not speaking that good of French, so I will continue in English. And the reason I speak a little French is that in middle school I had some lessons in French. And maybe you are familiar with Le Petit Prince, which is also a book I had to read. But that's off topic. Let's continue with the NextMind brain-computer interface device. So the NextMind device, the size of it is, like I read in an article, about the size of a puck you use in ice hockey. Well, I never played ice hockey, so I think that's about right. So it's about this size, as you can see right here. And what's really cool about the device, the battery life is about 8 hours, and then you have to recharge it. And also in the device there are sensoring strips, and I will get back to that later. There's also onboard processing and also a Bluetooth connection. So this device connects to your laptop or also to your smartphone, just wherever you have Bluetooth. So how does it work? Well, you wear this device, the NextMind, like this, and it registers the EEG signals, the electric signals at the back of your skull. And this is where your visual cortex is. So it registers the visual information. And this is another brain region compared to another BCI device I used. And this is called the Muse Headband. And it also uses EEG, but here the sensors are in front. And I use the Muse Headband to measure the quality of my meditation. And probably they think the best place to measure that, the alpha or beta brainwaves, is in front. So that's different compared to the NextMind, which is at the back. So what is EEG, where I'm talking about? Well, I read the book The Future of the Mind by Michio Kaku. I would highly recommend it if you're interested in neurotechnology and neuroscience. And I'm going to use a quote from his book. So an EEG scan differs from an MRI. MRI is magnetic. Scan in several crucial ways. So I'll skip the part of the MRI scan. So the EEG machine, however, is strictly passive. That is, it analyzes the tiny electromagnetic signals the brain naturally emits. The EEG excels at recording the broad electromagnetic signals that surge across the entire brain, which allows scientists to measure the overall activity of the brain as it sleeps, concentrates, relaxes, dreams, etc. So EEG is also, compared to the other technologies, MRI, ECOG, there are also more, one of the cheapest. So that's also, I think, the reason that NextMind and also the Muse I demonstrate, they use EEG at the moment. So the NextMind, they now have their developers kit. So as a game developer, you can make your own games and applications. But for me, as a regular user, you can also use it. And before you start playing some of the games, you have to do a short calibration. You have to focus on a little triangle that is forming, and then you get a score, and if the score is good enough, you can also use the different games and applications. So I'm going to show you a couple of them. So you have the PinPad, where you can make your pin code with your brain. You have the music composer, which I really like, where you can make music with your brain waves by looking at certain spots on the screen. And then you also have platformer, where it's a combination of using your keyboard, but also your brain waves by also looking at certain obstacles and enemies. And my favorite game is Brickbreaker, where you use, again, by looking at a certain spot on the screen, and thereby you can move the little platform and then make a high score, get a high score in this game. And what are some future applications? Well, like I mentioned, it's a developer's kit, so there are also people working on using the NextMind device to make their own application or game. So I could see gamers using this. For example, if you look at a certain direction, you can use your brain power to aim at an enemy, or maybe also to perform other actions. And you can also think of the use of this device in a virtual reality application, or mixed reality, or augmented reality, when you want to see some extra information of a building, just by looking at the building, concentrating on that image of the building, and then pops up more information, for example, about the history. There are also some people who can control their lights in their house, like Internet of Things, with the use of this device. So again, when you look at a certain area of your screen, or maybe also when you look at a certain light, then the light pops up. And one of the collaborations of the company NextMind is they also have a mind-enabled DJ set. So that's really cool. And like you can see, there are also researchers looking into the use of these brain-computer interface devices to work in a VR environment or to control Internet of Things applications. And some other interesting future applications are in the workforce. So I can imagine that a technician is wearing such a device when he or she is, for example, busy with their hands, and they also want to use some extra type of interaction, for example, also to pop up new information or maybe to shine a light. I can also, maybe in the future, surgeons will wear this, or traders, if they just want to have a more of an edge in their productivity or sharpness or other things. And you can also think of usages of brain-computer interfaces with the army. And this is an example where the US military is researching brain-computer interfacing for jet fighter pilots, for example, to control a swarm of drones with such a wearable headset. And again, when you talk about the army, but you can also think of why should traders or bankers or other people in the workplace wear these devices. Then we also, of course, have risks, and we have to talk about the ethics. And let's pinpoint to the last one of the use of these kinds of applications in the army. I came across a really interesting article. And in this quote, I want to focus on the last couple of sentences. So in January, the group under Evans' leadership, which is Nick Evans, received funding for a new project to investigate the ethics of soldiers' participation in experiments with AI-driven performance enhancements like brain-computer interfaces that augment a person's natural ability. So again, then we are talking, which is also a recurring theme on my blog and also in my videos, like what type of applications do we want to use these powerful technologies? And we can already use them for a lot, but in the future we can even see more types of applications of these kinds of things. And then the question becomes about ethics and technology ethics, like who decides when and how to use them, and also what are the possible ramifications, maybe some unforeseeable effects. So these kinds of conversations and dialogues are becoming more and more important. And I also had a conversation about this with the company. And what's really good, I think, from the company, they do not ask you, for example, to connect it with your Facebook profile or with your Google profile. Of course, there's a sort of dystopian future where you can collect the brain data of somebody and then also really see what they're thinking and also their dreams or fantasies. And as an example, the country of Chile is the first country that has a law for neuro rights. So to protect the privacy of a consumer, of a user of these kinds of devices. So I think that's really a step forward where governments and policymakers and politicians really need to be aware of new technologies that are heading our way, and also, how should they respond and also protect their inhabitants. So I want to share my opinion of the NextMind device. I think it's really amazing. It's one of the first, really consumer-ready applications of brain-computer interfacing. So I'm really enthusiastic. But I should also say it's not like I can use it while I'm doing a cognitive heavy task, like for example making this video or writing an article. Then I really have to think about the sentences and constructing arguments. And it's not like I can wear this device now and at the same time, while I'm doing this heavy lifting in my mind, at the same time use this brain control to maybe switch to another playlist, for example. So I really need to focus. But again, that's also what the Jedi, like Yoda, did in Star Wars. Really need to focus to control something with your brain. So I think we'll see brain-computer interfacing like NextMind more and more in the future. I think especially in certain applications for the workforce, and at the same time that also ask us of a society as a whole and also politicians and ethicists to start a conversation about privacy, about the ownership of data, but also how do we want to use it, and in what kind of situations do we want to use it, and who decides over this. But like I mentioned, I write a lot about this topic and also made a video about that, so check them out. And what's also really fascinating is that the future of brain-computer interfacing is also of the interest of big technology companies. And what I really like is this scene from one of my favorite series called Silicon Valley. And here you can see Nelson Big Head Bugatti. He's working in the company of Gavin Belson. He's the CEO of Hooli. And Big Head has the opportunity to work on innovation and new products. And this is where he proudly presents the new prototype of a brain-computer interface.
Wearing this standard Hooli earbud headphone, modified with a small piezoelectric sensor, the user can control their Hooli phone solely with their neural impulses.
Seriously?
Seriously.
This is great! Fuck yes, team! So what's our timeline here? I mean, when can we start testing this? How long before we can integrate this into Nucleus?
Not long. It'll probably happen in our lifetime. We just have to figure out how to make it work.
So to summarize, I talked about brain-computer interfacing as the future of human and technology interaction. I talked a bit about the company and the device, how does it work, the NextMind, what are some current and future applications, and I shared my opinion and my conclusion about brain-computer interfacing in general and specific the NextMind BCI device. So to come back to my story, I think now with this NextMind device where I can play games, make music, and maybe in the future also control the lights in my house, I have amazing psychic powers. And I think that's even better than Yuri did with his spoon. So eat that, Yuri. So thank you for watching this video. Please leave a comment if you have a question or a remark about brain-computer interfacing in general, or also maybe if you have a question about the NextMind device. And also I shared some of my tips about mind powers like Star Wars and of course The Man Who Stared at Goats. So if you have a tip concerning a movie or series, please also leave that down below. And I love to see your questions and your answers and your remarks. And do not forget to subscribe to my channel. And for now, when you're not wearing a brain-computer interface like the one from NextMind, I just ask from you to use your mouse or your keyboard or your finger to click on subscribe to my channel. Then you get a notification when I publish a new video. And also go to my website if you want to have in-depth knowledge on this topic, but also human enhancement, human augmentation. You can also find a free download. I also make a newsletter every month. And you can also go to the links down below if you want to hire me to deliver a webinar, to make a virtual keynote for other consultancy gigs. You can find the links under the heading Hire Me down below. And with that, I thank you for watching, and I will send an image of my mind power to you where I say greetings and see you in the future.